Imagine walking into a luxury dealership with your head held high, just looking to buy yourself a new car, only to have the owner look you up and down and basically say, "You don't belong here." Not because you can't afford it, but because, well, you don't look the part. Yeah, that happened. And you know what's wild? That same arrogant owner wound up losing every damn thing. All because the man he tried to humiliate turned out to be his biggest investor, the very lifeline of his business. So, let me tell you about David Carter and how karma sometimes wears a perfectly tailored suit. Now, David, he's not the type you notice right away in a crowd. No flashy jewelry, no gold chains, just a quiet kind of confidence. See, David grew up scraping by, single mom, rough neighborhood, you know the drill. But the guy's a grinder. He worked his way up, built a tech company from scratch, branched into real estate, and at some point, started investing quietly in local businesses. No press releases, no handshakes for the cameras, just results. To most people, he was just another successful black businessman. But behind the scenes, his investments kept half the city running, including this swanky car dealership downtown. The owner of the dealership, Richard, was a character. Picture every stereotype you can about a guy who thinks he owns the world. Expensive watches, loud laugh, handshakes that last just a bit too long. He believed image was everything. So if you didn't fit his idea of a high-value customer, you were invisible. What Richard didn't know was that his biggest silent partner, the guy who pumped millions into his business through a maze of shell companies, was none other than David. That's right, the same David he'd snub without a second thought. Fast forward a few months. Business at the dealership is slow, so slow you could hear the echo of your own disappointment in that giant glass showroom. Richard is sweating bullets, desperate for a cash injection, when David's firm steps in with a discreet, no names attached investment. Richard is thrilled. He thinks it's just some anonymous venture group, not realizing he's shaking hands with the man who can literally pull the rug out from under him. Now, here's where it gets good. One Saturday afternoon, David decides to pop in, not as the owner, not as the investor, just a regular customer. He shows up in dark jeans, polo, clean sneakers, nothing to make you look twice, just a man browsing for a car. The second he walks in, Richard's whole attitude shifts. He blocks David's path and says, "Sir, these cars start at $80,000. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the used lot down the street." David, as cool as you like, asks to see the spec sheet for one of the new models. Richard just laughs, shakes his head, says, "We don't have time to waste on people who aren't serious buyers." You could feel the whole room tense up. You know, David's used to this. He's been dealing with people like Richard his whole life. But this one hits different. It's his own money, his own business, and here he is, being treated like he's nothing. For a second, David just stands there, takes it in, then calmly pulls out his phone and says, "Okay, let's do this a different way." And man, let me tell you, that's when everything shifted. 20 minutes later, two black SUVs pull up, and out steps David's legal and financial team. Sharp suits, stone faces, the whole deal. They walk straight past Richard, greet David like he's royalty. "Mr. Carter, we're ready to finalize the withdrawal." And you should have seen the look on Richard's face, like someone yanked the floor out from under him. Customers are looking around, the staff is frozen, and Richard starts stammering. "Wait, you're him? The investor?" David just looks him in the eye, steady as ever. "Yes, Richard. I'm the man who's been keeping this place afloat. But after what you just did, humiliating me in my own dealership, I don't see any reason to continue." His team lays out the paperwork right on the counter, right there in the middle of the showroom, in front of everyone. No drama, no raised voices, just business. And as David signs those papers, you can practically hear the walls closing in on Richard. Now here's the twist, not the ending, but a little swerve. One of the salespeople, a woman named Marissa who'd watched the whole thing go down, steps up and tells Richard off in front of everyone. She says, "You always do this. You never give people a chance unless they look like you." "Well, I quit." She takes off her name badge, hands it to David, and walks out. You want to talk about tension? You could cut the air with a knife. So, David and his team pull out every cent. Within weeks, suppliers are gone, luxury cars stop rolling in, and word spreads online about what happened. People boycott the place. You can drive past now and see it. Once the busiest spot on Main Street, now a graveyard for failed egos. Richard lost the dealership, his reputation, and honestly, any shot he had at rebuilding. David, though, he just moves on, invests in a new dealership across town. This time, with a manager who greets every single customer like family. And that's really the lesson, isn't it? Prejudice has a price, and sometimes it's everything. It's so easy to judge someone by what you see or what you think you see, but you never know who you're talking down to. The person you brush off today could be signing your paycheck tomorrow, or even deciding if your doors stay open. Oh, let me ask you, was David right to pull the plug? Did Richard get what he deserved? Or was that too harsh? I want to hear what you think. Drop a comment. Tell me where you stand on justice, respect, and whether people ever really learn. And if you want more stories where karma comes calling, you know what to do. Hit like, subscribe, and let's keep the conversation rolling. You'd think that would be the end, right? David walking out. Richard left alone in his empty glass palace. Marissa gone. Story over. Lesson delivered. But real life's never that clean. Word travels fast in this city, especially when it smells like scandal and the fall of a so-called king. Within days, photos of that empty showroom were all over social media. Folks who'd been brushed off by Richard, yeah, turns out there were a lot, started sharing their own stories. Hashtags popped up overnight, customers calling for boycotts, and every time someone drove past that silent dealership, it felt like justice was peeking out from behind the curtains, smiling. But Richard, he wasn't done fighting. The guy tried everything, discounts, PR stunts, even offering Marissa her job back. She just laughed and said, "You still don't get it, do you?" Meanwhile, David kept his focus forward. He met up with Marissa for coffee a week later, offered her a position managing customer relations at his new dealership. She took it. Honestly, she brought more people over with her than Richard could ever hope to bring back. That new dealership, it became something different, you know? People showed up who'd never even thought about buying a luxury car before, just to see if the stories were true. If there really was a place where you could walk in wearing jeans and a t-shirt and still get treated like you mattered. And there were. David made sure of it. He'd sit in the back sometimes, listening to the sales team laugh and joke with customers, watching Marissa run the floor with the kind of energy you can't fake. And you could see him smile, just a little, knowing he'd built something real, not just a business, but a place people actually wanted to be. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Turns out, Richard had borrowed against his home to keep that dealership afloat. When the walls came down, he lost everything. Cars, business, the house, even some of the so-called friends who used to sip champagne with him in the VIP lounge. But one person reached out, a young mechanic named Joel, who Richard barely remembered. Joel called him up, not to gloat, but to say, "You know, everyone deserves a second chance. I got a friend looking for help in his shop, if you're willing to put in the work." It wasn't the life Richard pictured, but sometimes you gotta start over, sweeping floors instead of selling dreams. Now, here's where it gets real cinematic. One rainy Thursday, David walks into that small garage where Richard's working, hands covered in grease. There's this pause, this awkward silence, and for a second you can feel all the old tension bubbling up. But instead of turning away, David nods and says, "Good to see you again, Richard. Hope you're doing all right." Not a gloat, not a power play, just a man recognizing another man who'd finally learned what respect actually means. Richard just nods, a little shame in his eyes, but maybe something like gratitude too. You know what I mean? People talk about revenge like it's some perfect ending, but real life's messy, eh? Sometimes, the best you can do is walk away with your dignity, leave the door cracked open for someone to change. As for David, he kept building, investing, mentoring, hiring people who'd been overlooked, always remembering what it felt like to stand on the other side of that showroom glass. And as for Marissa, she became a bit of a legend. The way she tells it, that day she walked out was the day she finally realized her own worth. She built a team around her that looked out for each other, not just for the next sale. You'd hear customers leaving the dealership talking about her like she was the secret ingredient, the reason they came back. The reason they told their friends that, oh, what do you think? Did everyone get what they deserved? Is redemption real? Or is respect something you only get one shot at? I'd love to hear what you think. Drop your thoughts below. Maybe tell your own story if you've ever been underestimated or had to start over. And if you stuck with me this far, hit that like, subscribe, whatever you want to call it, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Who knows? Maybe next time the story's about you.